Though not as well known as Argentina or Chile, Brazil has a wine industry. And that industry is hoping to take on its neighbors in a controversial example of rising protectionism in the region. Brazilian wine producers want taxes raised on imported wines from Chile, France, and Spain, among other countries. The government is expected to make a final decision on the wine tax increase by August. Some winery owners hail the measure as their only possible salvation. They argue Brazil's overvalued currency, high taxes, and soaring costs have left them unable to compete with imported wines. Luis Enrique Zanini, who owns a small winery in Bento Gonçalves, says local producers should focus on promoting homegrown wines. On the contrary, this safeguard creates a bad image of us in the market. It will create a bad image for those who work on a daily basis with wines in stores and restaurants like sommeliers. There is no need for us to go against this market of imported wines. What we need to do is join forces with them to expand the wine culture. Many Brazilian wines are actually cheaper to buy in Miami than in Sao Paulo, and the imports are pricier still. Farmers in the Valley of Wines, many descendants of Italian immigrants, have produced low-end table wines for a century. Yet the mass production of so-called fine wines in Brazil, made from grape varieties such as Merlot and Chardonnay, really didn't begin until the 1990s. Adriano Miolo, chief executive officer of Brazil's largest producer of fine wines, said Brazil's fine wines industry could vanish without protectionist measures. It's not the case of stopping wine imports in Brazil, but it's also not the case, and I think this is what the sector is defending, that is, the companies, the cooperatives, the producers, and the entities, of allowing all this work we did to disappear after we developed our wine industry that's almost 150 years old and rich with history. People might say it was a production of low-quality wine, but it's true for all countries when they start out. But in the past 15 years, Brazil's wine production has changed completely, he said. Although Brazil's wine industry is tiny, its ambitions are big. While producers increased their output by 55% from 2005 to 2011, Brazilian consumers generally prefer imports. Carlos Paviani is the president of an industry group called Ibavarin. He says the proposed measures are vital for the industry's survival. The wine sector in Brazil is a very small sector, especially when you consider Brazil in the agriculture industry. Maybe we're being a bit daring here. I would even say overly daring when we're trying to raise taxes like this, he said. The debate is so intense in the Valley of the Wines that some neighbors have stopped talking to each other over the issue. Ademir Brandelli, who owns a small winery, said prejudice is the problem. This is our greatest challenge in Brazil. Brazilians have prejudice against Brazilians themselves and the things that we produce. Unfortunately, I say this because I travel a lot for business, and when I'm abroad, we hear Brazilians playing down our products, and that's what's happening here. Daniel Gysi, who runs Gysi Wineries in Brazil, says producers are focusing on the wrong product. He argues that sparkling wines, like the ones he has managed to successfully place on the market, were much more appropriate for this region. With our tax policies, the overtaxing of Brazilian wines makes them less competitive. But if we look at our sparkling wine industry, we face the same problems, and they are still competitive, he said. Rodrigo Martins, who runs a wine bar in Sao Paulo, says he used to carry about 50 Brazilian wines among the 500 or so in his collection. They simply didn't sell. Now he offers no more than 5. He said overtaxing imports would limit people's choice of wines. With €5, you can drink a great wine, but with 5 reals or 10 or maybe even 50 reals, you're going to have a very poor quality wine. Then all you've got left is beer and cachaca. So let's just drink beer and cachaca instead, he said. Brazil's trading partners, already irritated by its recent protectionist moves in other sectors, are expressing outrage over the proposed wine tax. And in big Brazilian cities like Sao Paulo, some restaurants have removed domestic wines from their menus in protest.
That's our story. Thanks for watching. We cover stories about fashion, lifestyle, culture, and travel throughout Latin America. Do take a moment to become a fan of our Facebook site and follow my travels throughout Latin America on Twitter. From Bogota, I'm Brian Anderson.